So for the second part, the judge is going to say that love is not art, conjugal love. He's going to say conjugal love is not a subject fit for art. It's not something we just shine and put on our shelves, or it's not just a work of art that we look at. Um, Usually we have our stories go like this, and some people really enjoy Disney movies. They get on my very last nerve. Um, and I couldn't figure out why before, why Disney stories, they're romantic and they're sweet and they're good for kids, but when adults really are enamored with them, I guess there are some things, I've tried to get to that point of why people like them, but there's a point in here that I think that it misses, and Kierkegaard says it perfectly, or the judge through Kierkegaard says it perfectly. Usually the story goes, the handsome prince fights the tigers and lions and ogres, and he does everything he can to rescue the princess, and immediately she falls in love, and then they live happily ever after. And that's the part that gets on my nerves. And the judge says, the story ends just when it gets interesting. And I think that's the part, is that, we never see what happens to them afterwards. Snow White is this beautiful princess, but then she gets old and fat. And, and the prince gets old and fat. And, what happens to these people afterwards? So marriage cannot be represented in art, for the very point in time is its extension. The married person has not fought with lions and ogres, but they fought with the most dangerous enemy, time. And I love that, because time is one of those things that we feel it's easy to war against, but it certainly isn't. He says, let us now glance at the relation between romantic and conjugal love. Romantic love remains constantly abstract in itself, and if it is able to acquire no external history, death already is lying in wait for it, because its eternity is illusory. Conjugal love begins with possession and acquires inward history. It is faithful. So is romantic love. But now note the difference. The faithful romantic lover waits, let us say, for 15 years, then comes the instant which rewards him. Here poetry rightly sees that the 15 years can very well be concentrated. It hastens on then to the moment. A married man is faithful for 15 years, yet during those 15 years he has had possession. So in the long succession of time he has acquired faithfulness. But such an ideal marriage cannot be represented, for the very point is its time and extension. At the end of the 15 years he apparently got no further than he was at the beginning, yet he has lived in a high degree aesthetically. And it goes on. It says, he alone, therefore, has triumphed over time. For one can say of the night that he has killed time, as indeed man constantly wishes to kill time when it has no reality for him. But this is never the perfect victory. The married man, being a true conqueror, has not killed time, but has saved it and preserved it. The married man who does this truly lives poetically. He solves the great riddle of living in eternity, yet hearing the hall clock strike, and hearing in such a way that the stroke of the hour does not shorten but prolong his eternity. The contradiction is profound, but far more glorious than the situation described in the well-known tale of the Middle Ages, which tells of an unhappy man who woke in hell and cried, "What time is it?" And the devil answered, "An eternity." I guess that's probably not a good way to describe marriage, but nonetheless, he's saying he's conquered time. He's not just lived in the moment. Okay, moving on. So he says, if you want to develop yourself, if you want to become someone, and the whole story of love here is to talk about that. And the type of life that the judge is proposing is that it has to be lived over a lifetime. That you must have something in possession. That you must have something that you have committed yourself to. The greatest difference between the aesthetic and the ethical is this matter of choice, where I finally make a choice and I say, I'm going to put myself in that. So the aesthetic life is full of choices, but none are very significant. If you only aim to be interesting and not get stuck in commitments, it's going to be as A states. He says, my life is, I'm sorry. I think, where did I go with that? I'm sorry. He says, marry and you will regret it. Do not marry and you will also regret it. Whether you marry or you do not marry, you will regret it either way. Laughing at the stupidities of the world, you will regret it. Weep over them and you will also regret it. Whether you laugh at the stupidities of the world or weep over them, you will regret it either way. Trust a girl and you will regret it. Do not trust her, you will regret it. Whether you trust a girl or do not trust her, you will regret it. Hang yourself and you will regret it. Do not hang yourself and you will regret it. Whether you hang yourself or do not hang yourself, you will regret it either way. This, gentlemen, is the quintessence of the wisdom of life. And so he says, whatever choice you make, you're going to regret it. So don't make a choice. And he says, no, make a choice and live with the choice. So we say, if we drift, the judge says, if we drift and never take control of our lives, we treat every either or as indifferent and we lose ourselves. There will be nobody who we are. So I always think about the high school student that I work with, who was a very bright kid, but he never did anything, and he had been doing nothing since he was a freshman. He was really bright, but he would sit in class and sleep, and people said before he was just a really good student, but one teacher said, I'm afraid that he's been doing nothing for so long that he's never going to do anything. And I think that there does come a point, and Kierkegaard is saying there does come a point where your life drifts so far that you never make a choice. So then we have this problem, that your life is adrift. He even says this. He says, imagine a captain of a ship. The moment a shift of direction must be made, then he may be able to say, I can do either this or that. But if he is not a mediocre captain, he will also be aware that during all this, the ship is plowing ahead with its ordinary velocity, and thus there is but a single moment when it is inconsequential whether he does this or does that. So also with a person, there eventually comes a moment where it is no longer a matter of either or, not because he has chosen, but because he has refrained from it, which also can be expressed by saying, because others have chosen for him, or because he has lost himself. And you either make a choice or you let the choices be made, but either way, things are still moving on. The judge says you need a seriousness of choice. When one chooses seriously, one engages oneself, and one chooses ethically. At first, he's not asking him to choose a good. He's just saying, make a choice. Even if you make mistakes, make a choice. And he states that in choosing, and if you choose, you come to the aid of romantic love by being the type of person who will commit themselves to continue to nurture and care for love. Such a beautiful thing to say. Love lasts when people nurture it and care for it. When people stop nurturing and caring for it, then love goes away. It's interesting. Words of wisdom for our generation. It is no longer a matter of what happens to you. It's a matter of what you do with what happens to you. Again, the ethical person gives up the futile project of simply trying to be something and takes up the project of becoming something and being responsible for their choices in that. So there you have it. I will put these up as fast as I can, and please listen to these before. Well, if you're not listening, then too bad. But the quiz is going to be on these.